All right, we're going to go through the answer key for the 8.4 to 8.5 day 1 worksheet that is in your workbook. The first 9 answers you can go through. Those are pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through some of the more ones where we have to solve the triangles here. So looking at number 10, we are given this angle at 29 here, and then we are being asked to find the hypotenuse, and we are given the adjacent. So that is going to be a cosine. And so we're going to have cosine of 29 is equal to our adjacent, which is 8, divided by our hypotenuse, which is our unknown x. Remember, you can think of this as over 1. So when we go to cross multiply, the x comes out in front of the cosine of 29. And we're looking for x, so we want to isolate it. So we are going to divide both sides. And this is then what's going to go into our calculator. And we're going to round this to the nearest tenth to get approximately 9.1. In number 11, we are given the angle 15 here, and then you can see that we are looking for the opposite, and we are given the hypotenuse, and so that tells us we're going to use a sine. So sine of 15 is equal to the opposite, which is our unknown, over our hypotenuse, which is 12. When we cross multiply here, this sets us up with x being isolated, and we are able to put this into our calculator and get approximately 3.1. In number 12, we are given the angle measure of 36 here. We are looking for the adjacent, that's our x, and we are given our opposite, which is 7. And so that tells me I'm going to use tangent. So tan of 36 is equal to the opposite, which was 7, over the adjacent, which is our x. When we cross multiply here, we are going to then have to isolate that x and divide. And this is what we're putting on our calculator to get approximately 9.6. Number 13, we're given the angle measure of 64 here. And we are asked to find the opposite, which is x. We are given the adjacent at 11, so that is tangent. So tan of 64 is equal to the opposite, x, divided by the adjacent, 11. When we cross multiply, x is isolated, and this is what we're putting into our calculator to get our approximate answer here. If we look at number 14, we are given 41, and we have the hypotenuse given to us, and we are looking for the adjacent, and so that is going to be cosine. And so cosine of 41 is going to be the adjacent, which is x, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 32. When we cross multiply there, x is isolated. This is what goes into our calculator. Number 15, we're given 63. We have been given the opposite, which is 10, and we are looking for the hypotenuse, which is x, and so that is going to be a sine. So sine of 63 is going to be equal to the opposite, which is 10, divided by x, which is our unknown hypotenuse. And so you're going to see that x is going to end up in front there. We're going to have to divide by this, and this is the expression that is going to go into our calculator to get our answer. Make this a little bit bigger here. Okay. All right, so in this one, we are rounding, solving the right triangle. So we are looking for any angle measure being rounded to the nearest tenth of the degree and leaving all the side measures in simplified radical form. Okay, so when I look at number 16, the first thing I see is that I have the legs and I'm missing the hypotenuse. And so the first thing I would do there is do the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so that's our first step to get to Pythagorean theorem. To get to that segment is 2 times the square root of 65. Okay, I then have, I know that this is 90, but I need to find these two angle measures. And so remember that when I'm looking for the angle measure, what I'm actually using is the inverse of the tangent or cosine or sine, whatever I need in the problem. So if I start here, remember it's all about perspective, so I'm starting at L, and I really want to try to use what's given to me and not what I have found. So if I'm here at L, then what I have is my opposite is 8 and my adjacent is 14, and so I know that that's going to be a tangent. So I'm going to say that the measure of angle L is equal to the inverse tangent of 8 divided by 14. And that goes into our calculator, and that's our answer there. I change my perspective then. I come up here and look at M. When I look at M, I have once again given to me the adjacent and the opposite. And so that once again is going to be the inverse tangent. I'm just going to have to be careful of how I write that ratio. So the measure of angle M here, here's my inverse tangent, and this time when I go opposite over adjacent, that is 14 over 8. This is what goes in my calculator, and there's my answer. Number 17, I'm given a leg and the hypotenuse, and so I have to use Pythagorean Theorem to find this segment here, and that's going to be 5 times the square root of 11. Then I'm going to start with my missing angles. So if I look at M first, from that perspective, from that point of view, then this is going to be the hypotenuse, and this is going to be the adjacent. And so that tells me that this is going to be cosine. And remember, if I'm looking for the angle, then I'm using the inverse. So the measure of angle M is the inverse cosine of the adjacent over the hypotenuse, so 25 over 30. That goes into our calculator to get that answer. Change my point of view up here to L, to angle L, trying to find the measure there. I have the hypotenuse and I have the opposite, and so that's going to be sine, and it's inverse sine since I'm looking for the angle, and so I'm going to take the inverse sine of the opposite 25 over the hypotenuse 30. That's what goes in our calculator, and there's our answer. If we look at number 18, we are given a leg and a hypotenuse, so I'm going to use that first with the Pythagorean Theorem to find out this segment measure. And then I'm going to look at my angle. So there's angle L. In angle L, I am given the adjacent and the hypotenuse, and you can see I can use inverse cosine. And that goes into our calculator. Here's our answer. If we look at the perspective of angle M, what I have is the hypotenuse and the opposite, so that is going to be sine. So I'm using inverse sine of the opposite over the hypotenuse, 7 over 39. This goes in our calculator, and there is our answer. Number 19 asks us to find the area of the bold triangle. So if we look at this triangle, we were told this, which tells me this is an isosceles triangles and my base angles are congruent. And so I knew that piece. I also knew that if this was 25 here and this was 90, that this would be a triangle sum, and so that would have to be 65. And once I knew that was 65, I knew this would be 65. And I know that the triangle sum of the whole thing here is 180, and so then I would know that this is also 25. So I would take, and if I am looking for this measurement here of x, then I'm going to take the 25, and I know the opposite, and I'm looking for the adjacent. So this is going to be tangent of 25 is equal to the opposite, which is 6, divided by the adjacent, which was the unknown, what we're looking for. And so that is going to give me approximately 12.9. Now, it asked me for the area. So what I need to do is then, that's my height, and this is my base. And so here's my area here, 1/2 the base times the height. In number 20, we were told that the area is 88, and we were asked to find x. So I looked at this and said, if the area is 88, and I know that the base here is 16, I could solve this for the height, and the height is 11. So that's an 11 there. Those are not showing me congruency. It's an 11. And so when I look at that, then what I need to do is I need to figure out that what this angle is here. And if I know that, I know this is 11 and I know that this is 8. And so that is the opposite side and the adjacent side. And if I'm looking for the angle, that's the inverse tangent of the opposite, which was 11, divided by the adjacent, which was 8, gives us an angle of 54 degrees. Okay, let me move this up here. Okay, number 21. We were told that we had a rectangle, and so if I look here at this 28 degrees, I would know that I'm looking for, if I want to find the area, I need to know the base times the height. And so if I start with the 28 and I think, well, if I have the hypotenuse and I want to find the opposite, that is going to be sine. So I'm going to say sine of 28 is the opposite x divided by the hypotenuse 21. When I cross multiply, this what goes in my calculator, gives me this answer. And then if I look at this and say, well, if I look here for the cosine of 28, and now this is my unknown, I want to find this, this is going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And so when I put that into my calculator, that is going to give me this answer here in red. And then I'm still looking for the area, so I'm going to have to take and multiply what I found for the base and the height, which is the 18.5 and the 9.9, and that gives me the area there. Solving for x here. Here is our x. If this is 17 feet here, then we know this is going to be 17 here. And then we're going to say that we're looking, this is our x here, this would be the opposite, and this would be the adjacent. And since we're looking for the degree, that's our inverse tangent of the opposite, 28, divided by the adjacent, 17, gives us 59 degrees. In number 23, we're looking at a ladder. So the ladder stands 7 meters long, and it makes a 73-degree angle. And we want to know how far from the wall to the bottom of the ladder. So this is what we're looking for here. And so if this is 73, then this is hypotenuse and adjacent. And so that tells us that we are going to use cosine. So the cosine of 73 is equal to the adjacent, which we didn't know, x, that's what we're looking for, over the hypotenuse, which is 7. And when we cross multiply, we get this, and we can put that in our calculator to get our answer. Here we have a 16-foot ladder. We know that this is 4 foot. Now we're looking for the angle measure. This tells me it's going to be an inverse function. And so when I look at this, I'm given the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So picking up with number 24, we have the unknown angle here, and then we have the adjacent and the hypotenuse. And so that is going to be a cosine, and since we're looking for the angle, that's an inverse cosine of the adjacent 4 over the opposite 16, and it said to round to the whole number, so we're going to have 76 there. And then our last one, we have a 23-foot wire, and it's coming to an angle of 58, and we are asked for both things: how far up the tree is the wire attached and how far from the base. And so if we look here, the first one I did was to find this measurement. So this is our 58, and so we are looking for the adjacent, and we have the hypotenuse, and so that is going to be this one over here. And you can see that that would be a cosine of the x here divided by 23, and that's going to give us approximately 12.2. And then if we're looking at this, we are looking at the opposite and the hypotenuse, and that is going to be the sine. And when we cross multiply, that's going in our calculator, and that is our answer.